The rain hit the zinc rooftop so hard that night it sounded like stones falling from the sky. Villagers stumbled through muddy paths with lanterns shaking in their hands, their voices trembling as they gathered outside the largest compound in Umuaka village. Open the gate. Something has happened. I saw the boy run out. Thunder cracked above them. Then the gate slowly opened. And there he was. Chidi. Standing barefoot in the rain. His shirt soaked with blood. His chest rising and falling like he had outrun death itself. Nobody spoke at first. Nobody moved. Then one woman pushed forward with a terrified whisper. Where is Madam Nwaka? Chidi looked toward the dark compound behind him. His lips trembled, but no words came out. Inside the house, something metallic clattered onto the floor. And suddenly, the women began screaming. Because everybody in Umuaka feared Madam Nwaka. But nobody had ever imagined she could die. 3 months earlier, Chidi had never planned to step anywhere near her compound. Even hearing her name made people uncomfortable. Women lowered their voices whenever they discussed her in the market. Children stopped playing whenever she passed. Men twice her size suddenly remembered important places to be whenever she appeared on the road. Fear followed Madam Nwaka like perfume. And nobody knew exactly why. Some claimed she used dark powers. Others believed she destroyed families with secrets she collected over the years. But whether the stories were true or not hardly mattered anymore. Fear had lived in the village for so long that it no longer needed proof. One hot evening, Chidi sat outside his mother's crumbling hut, staring at an empty cooking pot while his younger sister cried quietly beside him. His mother coughed violently from inside the room. The sound cut through him like a knife. You need to eat something, he told her softly. I'm not hungry, she lied. But Chidi knew hunger had already become normal inside their home. For weeks he searched for work. At the farms. At the market. At nearby villages. Nothing came. That evening Mama Ebra approached him slowly with a tray of roasted corn balanced on her head. Her tired eyes studied him carefully. You went to the mechanic workshop again. Chidi nodded weakly. They said they don't need anybody. Mama Ebra sighed. Then she hesitated. There's one place still looking for a worker. The silence between them suddenly became heavy. Chidi looked up immediately. No. Mama Ebra lowered her voice. Listen to me carefully. Hunger is terrible, but some money carries suffering with it. You think I don't know that? Chidi snapped. My mother is sick. My siblings haven't eaten since yesterday. Mama Ebra glanced around nervously before leaning closer. Madam Nwaka changes people. Workers enter that compound one way and leave another. What exactly did she do to them? The old woman opened her mouth. Then closed it again. That woman, she whispered carefully, is not somebody you want to know closely. But desperation is stronger than fear when hunger enters a house. The next morning Chidi stood before Madam Nwaka's compound with sweat gathering under his shirt despite the cool air. The building towered over nearby houses like it owned the entire street. High walls. Rust-covered gate. Dark windows. A place built to intimidate. The gate creaked open slowly before he could knock. A tall woman wrapped in expensive lace stood staring at him from inside the compound. Madam Nwaka. She was older than he expected, but there was something unsettling about her calmness. Her face carried no warmth. Only control. So you're the boy looking for work. Her voice was soft. Too soft. Yes, Ma. You're poor. Chidi swallowed hard. Yes. And desperate. He hesitated before nodding. For the first time, she smiled. Not kindly. Like somebody who had just found something useful. Good, she said. Desperate people obey instructions. The gate slammed shut behind him. That sound echoed inside his chest long after. At first, the work seemed normal enough. Sweeping. Cleaning. Fetching water. Running errands. But by the third day, the humiliation began. Look at this floor. Madam Nwaka shouted one afternoon. Did goats raise you? I cleaned it already, Ma. Are you arguing with me? No, Ma. Then kneel down and clean it again. The traders outside heard her voice through the open window. Chidi felt their eyes on him as he scrubbed the floor on his knees. Madam Nwaka smiled while sipping tea. You people from poor homes always behave like animals. Chidi clenched his fist silently. But he needed the money. So he endured. Days turned into weeks. The insults became routine. Sometimes she woke him before sunrise just to rearrange furniture she never planned to move. Sometimes she scattered rice across the floor and forced him to pick every grain one by one. And somehow, the calmer her voice sounded, the more terrifying she became. One evening while washing clothes outside, Chidi noticed something strange. 3 doors inside the house remained permanently locked. Nobody entered them. Nobody mentioned them. But every night around midnight, Madam Nwaka disappeared into one of the rooms for hours. And each time she returned, her expression looked colder. Then the storm came. Rain pounded violently across Umuaka that night. Wind rattled windows. Thunder shook the walls. Chidi lay awake on a stained mattress when he heard it. Digging. Slow. Heavy. Scraping through wet earth. At first he thought he imagined it. Then it came again. Scrape. 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 Curiosity pulled him toward the window. Outside, lightning flashed across the compound. And there she was. Madam Nwaka. Digging beneath the mango tree with bare hands. Rain soaked her wrapper completely, but she kept digging furiously like somebody running out of time. Chidi's breathing slowed. Then she pulled a wooden box from the ground. Lightning flashed again. For one terrifying second, he saw what was inside. Photographs. Blood-stained cloth. Sheets of paper covered with names. Another flash revealed bundles of money. Chidi stepped backward in shock. His elbow struck a metal cup beside the window. Clang. The sound cut through the storm instantly. Madam Nwaka froze. Slowly. Very slowly. She lifted her head toward his window. Their eyes met. And Chidi's blood turned cold. The next morning the compound felt strangely quiet. Too quiet. Madam Nwaka sat at the dining table drinking tea while Chidi swept nearby. Neither of them spoke for several minutes. Then suddenly she asked, "Did you sleep well last night?" Chidi nearly dropped the broom. "Yes, Ma." "Interesting." She stirred her tea slowly. "Because I thought I heard movement near the servants' quarters." Chidi forced himself to keep sweeping. Madam Nwaka smiled faintly. "You know something I've learned about fear?" she asked softly. "No, Ma." "Fear makes guilty people careless." She stood up carefully and walked toward him. Every step tightened the pressure inside his chest. When she stopped beside him, her perfume mixed with the smell of rainwater and cigarettes. Then she leaned close enough for him to hear her whisper. "If you ever spy on me again, they will never find your body." She walked away calmly. As if she had merely discussed the weather. That night Chidi couldn't sleep. Every sound inside the compound made him jump. Every shadow looked dangerous. By morning his hands trembled while serving breakfast. Madam Nwaka noticed immediately. "You're shaking," she said. "I am fine." "No, you're afraid." Her eyes narrowed slightly. And frightened people usually do stupid things. Later that afternoon, she accused him of stealing money. In front of everybody. "I left 5,000 naira here yesterday," she announced loudly while traders gathered outside her gate. "Now it's missing." Chidi stared at her in disbelief. "Ma, I didn't take anything." "You expect me to believe that?" "I swear." "Quiet." Her voice exploded across the compound. "You poor people always think suffering gives you permission to steal." The nearby traders avoided eye contact. Nobody defended him. Not one person. Then Madam Nwaka turned toward the crowd. Search his room. Chidi's stomach dropped. 2 men entered the servants' quarters. Moments later they emerged holding folded cash. Cash Chidi had never seen before. His knees weakened instantly. That's not mine. Madam Nwaka shook her head slowly like a disappointed mother. I gave you work when nobody else wanted you. More, please. And this is how you repay me. You planted that money. Chidi shouted desperately. The moment the words left his mouth, silence swallowed the compound. Nobody accused Madam Nwaka of lying. Nobody. The villagers looked at Chidi with the same expression people reserved for doomed men. Madam Nwaka's face remained calm, but her eyes darkened dangerously. You should be careful, she said quietly. A person in your position cannot afford disrespect. I didn't steal from you. Then perhaps, she replied softly, the money walked into your room itself. A few nervous laughs escaped from the crowd, but they died quickly. Because even those pretending to support her were afraid of her too. Madam Nwaka stepped closer until Chidi could see tiny drops of rainwater still clinging to her earrings from the previous night. You think suffering makes you special, she whispered. Everybody in this village is suffering. The difference is that some of us learned how to survive. Chidi's chest burned with humiliation. But worse than the shame was the realization that nobody cared whether he was innocent. Madam Nwaka had already decided the truth. And in Umuaka village, her version of events usually became reality. That evening, she refused to give him food. She locked the kitchen. Locked the water storage. Then ordered him to sleep outside near the gate like a stray dog. The cold night wind cut through his thin shirt while mosquitoes hummed around his ears. Inside the house, he could hear Madam Nwaka laughing softly while listening to music. The sound nearly broke him. By dawn, his eyes were swollen from exhaustion. As he sat beside the gate fighting sleep, somebody approached quietly from the road. Mama Ebra. You look terrible, she whispered. Chidi laughed bitterly. She wants to destroy me. Mama Ebra glanced nervously toward the compound before crouching beside him. Listen carefully. There are things about that woman people are too afraid to say openly. Like what? The old woman hesitated. Then spoke carefully. Her husband wanted to expose her before he died. Chidi frowned. Expose what? She collects secrets. What do you mean? Mama Ebra lowered her voice further. Politicians. Traders. Married men. Village elders. She knows things about everybody. Some people willingly gave her information. Others were blackmailed. Chidi stared at her. So all the stories about spiritual powers. Fear created those stories, Mama Ebra interrupted quickly. People fear what they cannot control. But what's inside that wooden box? The old woman's face tightened immediately. I don't know. And you should pray you never find out. Before leaving, she grabbed his wrist firmly. Leave that compound if you still can. But Chidi already understood the truth. Madam Nwaka would never let him live peacefully. Not after what he saw. That same afternoon, Obina visited the compound pretending concern. Obina had grown up with Chidi. They played football together as children. Shared meals. Shared dreams. Seeing a familiar face nearly brought relief. My brother, Obina said quietly after greeting Madam Nwaka politely, I heard what happened. She's lying, Chidi replied immediately. Obina nodded sympathetically. I know. Everybody knows. But something about his eyes felt strange. Unsteady. Avoiding direct contact. You need to be careful, Obina continued. People are saying she wants village guards involved. Chidi's stomach tightened. For theft. Obina leaned closer. She's telling people you entered forbidden rooms inside the house. Chidi froze instantly. Madam Nwaka never mentioned the hidden rooms publicly before. Which meant she knew he was getting closer to something. That night Chidi couldn't stop thinking about Mama Ebra's warning. Secrets. Blackmail. Fear. The pieces no longer felt random. And somewhere inside that compound was the reason an entire village feared one woman. Around midnight, Madam Nwaka left for a late community meeting. For the first time in weeks, the compound stood completely silent. Chidi's heart pounded violently as he approached the locked hallway. He knew getting caught could destroy him. But he also knew ignorance would destroy him eventually too. His hands shook while testing the first door. Locked. Second door. Locked. Then the third. It creaked open slowly. Cold air spilled from inside. The room smelled of dust, old paper, and something else. Something metallic. Chidi stepped inside carefully. And stopped breathing. Cabinets lined the walls from floor to ceiling. Folders. Photographs. Audio recorders. Letters tied with string. Bundles of cash stacked inside metal boxes. At first the room looked chaotic. Then he started reading names. Village elders. Church leaders. Market women. Politicians. Everybody. Madam Nwaka had records on everybody. Confessions. Affairs. Land disputes. Bribes. Hidden children. Illegal deals. Secrets capable of destroying entire families. Fear tightened around Chidi's chest. Not because of witchcraft. But because he finally understood her real power. People obeyed Madam Nwaka because she could ruin them socially, financially, emotionally. The stories about dark powers simply made resistance even harder. Then Chidi noticed something else. A folder labeled Obina. His hands trembled while opening it. Inside were payment records, dates, amounts, and handwritten notes. Obina had been reporting information to Madam Nwaka for months. Every conversation. Every complaint. Every plan. Betrayal hit harder than fear. You shouldn't have opened that fire. The voice behind him nearly stopped his heart. Chidi turned slowly. Madam Nwaka stood in the doorway. Calm. Silent. Terrifying. Rain thundered outside again. You, Chidi whispered. Madam Nwaka closed the door gently behind her. Do you know the problem with poor people? She asked softly. You mistake kindness for weakness. You ruin people's lives. No, she corrected calmly. People ruin themselves. I only kept records. You blackmailed them. And they paid because they feared consequences. Fear is useful, Chidi. Fear keeps society obedient. Her eyes hardened suddenly. But now you've become a problem. Chidi backed away slowly. Madam Nwaka sighed almost sadly. I gave you opportunities. Food. Shelter. Work. You humiliated me every day. And yet you stayed. The words hit him like a slap because they were true. She smiled faintly. Desperation makes slaves of people long before chains do. Then she stepped aside from the doorway. Tomorrow morning, village guards will arrive. You confess publicly to theft. What? You heard me. I won't confess to lies. Madam Nwaka tilted her head slightly. Then perhaps your mother will suffer instead. Rage exploded inside Chidi instantly. You leave my family alone. Or what? She asked calmly. You'll kill me. The room fell silent. Thunder shook the windows violently. For one dangerous second, neither of them moved. Then Madam Nwaka smiled. Not kindly. Like somebody studying an animal close to snapping. Get out of my sight, she whispered. The next morning, the humiliation became public. Villagers gathered while Madam Nwaka accused Chidi before everybody. Village guards slapped him repeatedly. People watched silently. Some looked uncomfortable. Most looked relieved it wasn't them. Then Obina stepped forward pretending concern. Please forgive him, he told Madam Nwaka dramatically. Hunger pushed him into bad decisions. Chidi stared at him in disbelief. You betrayed me. Obinna avoided his eyes. I tried helping you. No, Chidi said bitterly. You sold me. Madam Nwaka watched everything with satisfaction glowing behind her calm expression. That night the rain returned stronger than before. Floodwater rushed through village roads. Electricity failed across Umuaka. Darkness swallowed everything. Inside the compound, candles flickered against the walls while thunder rattled windows violently. Chidi sat alone in the servants' quarters trying to decide whether to run. Then Madam Nwaka's voice echoed through the hallway. Come here. Every instinct warned him not to move. But refusing her orders felt equally dangerous. He entered her room slowly. Candlelight danced across her face while rain hammered the roof overhead. For a moment she simply stared at him. Then she laughed softly. You hate me now. You destroyed my life. No, she replied calmly. Your life was already broken before you met me. The words pierced something inside him. You think anybody respects poor people, she continued. This village only pretends to care about kindness. But fear. Fear earns obedience immediately. You enjoy hurting people. Madam Nwaka poured herself a drink. Hurt people survive longer. You threaten my family. And I can do worse. Something inside Chidi snapped completely. Years of hunger. Humiliation. Fear. Pain. All boiling together at once. You think power makes you untouchable, he shouted. Madam Nwaka's eyes narrowed dangerously. You're forgetting your place. My place. Chidi laughed bitterly. You treated me like an animal. Without warning, Madam Nwaka grabbed a kitchen knife from the table. You should have remained obedient. Everything happened too fast afterward. She lunged forward violently. Chidi grabbed her wrist. The knife clattered against furniture. Candles crashed onto the floor. Thunder exploded outside while they struggled through the dark room. Madam Nwaka fought with terrifying strength. Years of buried rage fueled both of them. Furniture splintered. Glass shattered. Rain blew through broken windows. Then suddenly, the knife drove deep. Madam Nwaka froze. Her eyes widened slowly. For one long second, neither of them moved. Then she collapsed. Silence swallowed the room. Only rain remained. Chidi stumbled backward, breathing hard, staring at the blood spreading across the floor. He expected relief. Instead he felt empty. Outside, voices rose near the compound gate. Villagers shouting. Lanterns approaching. Somebody began pounding loudly. Open the gate. Chidi looked down at Madam Nwaka's lifeless body. The woman who terrorized Umuaka village was finally gone. But the fear she created still remained inside everybody else. By sunrise, villagers flooded the compound. Nobody cried openly. Nobody mourned loudly. Instead, people whispered nervously while secrets from Madam Nwaka's hidden room spread across the village like wildfire. Affairs exposed. Bribes uncovered. Families shattered. Truth finally walked freely through Umuaka. And many people feared it more than they ever feared Madam Nwaka herself. As Chidi walked away from the village road later that morning, Mama Ebera watched him quietly. You're leaving? Chidi nodded weakly. There's nothing left for me here. Mama Ebera looked toward Madam Nwaka's compound one final time. For years everybody waited for somebody else to stop her, she whispered sadly. That's how evil survives. Behind them, villagers tore down the compound gate piece by piece. But even as the walls fell, silence still hung heavily over Umuaka. Because deep down, everybody understood the uncomfortable truth. Madam Nwaka did terrible things. But fear and silence helped her do them for years. And sometimes, a whole community helps create the monsters it later pretends to fear. If this story taught you anything, let it be this: silence can be just as dangerous as evil itself. Tell me in the comments, do you think Madam Nwaka was born a monster, or did the village create her? And if you enjoyed this African folktale, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more powerful village stories every week.